Forgive my language, all you and the rest of the division. What, Weidman? What the hell? You lost your last fight. I've had 3 victories since you got your ass kicked off Luke Rockhold. Rockhold, I knocked you out in 3 minutes, buddy. Yoel Romero, you're suspended for steroids. Shame on you. And Jacare, you just got me off your ass. All of you. Win a fight, get off the couch. Let's do this.
It is all over. The new UFC Middleweight Champion of the World.
We are back on the show, and Robin stated it earlier. The middleweight division, it's so loaded at the moment, so many interesting possibilities, and this month was somewhat designed as this unofficial contenders tournament. We did lose the fight between Luke Rockhold and Jacare coming up in a couple of weeks in Melbourne, but circling back to this past weekend, Yoel Romero defeats Chris Weidman in impressive fashion. All indications is that is the fight they want to make with Michael Bisping for his next championship title defense. But there's a lot in play, John. We still have Robert Whittaker and Derek Brunson who are going to be fighting. Gegard Mousasi certainly in that mix if he can get a victory over Uriah Hall. And so many different alternatives as well. If Michael Bisping wants to push hard for a fight with a
Vitor Belfort,
with a Vitor Belfort, with a Nick Diaz, with a George St. Pierre. But where does Yoel Romero stand at this point? Is he the deserving contender at this point?
I would have to say absolutely yes. You saw what he did against Chris Weidman, and we saw how good Chris Weidman looked in his fight, even though it was a losing effort against Luke Rockhold. Still looked great against Anderson Silva. But this is the fight you have to make. If I'm Michael Bisping, I sign and then pull out because I have an injury. Is this the guy that you really want to be facing? This big, powerful machine? I don't know, but right now, as Robin pointed out, and you were talking about, 185 pounds, one of the best divisions out there. You have an interesting champion in Michael Bisping, who defeated that new generation of fighters in Luke Rockhold, has the win over Anderson Silva. He's at the top of the mountain, and then there was kind of a logjam to figure out who the #1 contender is. I think we figured that out. That is Yoel Romero, but a lot of people out there believe that it should be Jacare, because Jacare, to a lot of the hardcore fans, deserved the nod over Romero when they fought. Luke Rockhold had his chance. Michael Bisping knocked him out. So it looks like Yoel Romero is the guy. But I think it's interesting, all the fighters underneath Yoel Romero. Yes, let's just say he is the guy that gets the next crack of the 185-pound championship. You have Mousasi, you have Whittaker, you have Brunson. Look at the list of fighters right here. Any of these guys you can sell against Michael Bisping for the middleweight championship. And if Yoel Romero happens to be the champion, you have all these guys that you can sell as the #1 contender.
Yeah, Whittaker Bisping would be interesting. We'd love to see Gegard and Bisping. And of course, if Uriah beats him, it would go the other way. But I think Yoel Romero's the man. I really do. Weidman was the man, and Weidman looked great in round 1. Was moving well, was himself in that fight. And Romero came out, was super patient and very, very smart and very opportunistic. He took that position in round 2, and then of course that flying knee. I think Yoel Romero, he's always been really skilled. He's always been a world-class, beyond world-class, Olympic-class wrestler. He's always been a very agile, powerful athlete. But to see the patience and the smarts in that fight, he's terrifying.
Jacare, I think, really gets hurt with this Luke Rockhold injury, because I feel this would be a much more open debate if that fight was still to come this month. And if Jacare were to beat Luke Rockhold, and that's a huge if, I mean, that to me makes a really compelling argument, because Romero and Jacare had such a close fight. There was the fence grab in there. I mean, certainly it was, if you wanted to make the argument for Jacare over Romero, you could make that argument. But with Jacare out this month in terms of not getting that next fight, I think he does take a back seat. Chris Weidman is also in an interesting position, because for the first time in 3.5 years, he's removed from the title mix. And we look at that list there. You have 2 losses in a row, even against this level. It does set you back. And what do you feel Chris Weidman, I mean, he's going to get somebody tough next. It's just a question of when that will be, because he is someone that can certainly fight for the title again in his career. But this is the first time we've seen him outside of that picture in quite some time.
Yeah, I would imagine, based on what we know of Chris Weidman, he's not going to take a softball in any way. I think that when the time comes and he's ready to compete, he's going to want somebody in the top 5. I wouldn't be surprised if he said, hey, I know what just happened in my last 2 fights. I want to fight for the title. I believe that I'm championship material. Give me Jacare. That's the only way people are going to believe that I should get a title shot. Give me Jacare. I beat Jacare. I'll have another opportunity either at Yoel Romero or Michael Bisping.
I think you guys are right, and Pollock, you're right about Jacare. He takes a hit because Luke Rockhold is just busy being handsome and dating models and singers and being a model himself kind of thing. So he's off. So Jacare sits, and he'll either have to fight the winner of Mousasi Hall or Brunson. Brunson Whitaker or Weidman. But those guys suddenly become the next level together, all of them.
As well, with Michael Bisping, I mean, this is a guy that you look at what he has done this year, and that Yoel Romero fight gets booked. Like, no doubt, this guy, again, significant underdog as champion, which is kind of the role he's going to find himself in. And I find that part kind of intriguing, that you list all of these contenders, and I think you make strong cases that the challenger, with whichever option you go, would be favored against the champion. And Michael Bisping has kind of made it his hallmark this year of upsetting odds makers in spectacular fashion with Anderson Silva, with Luke Rockhold. And I mean, Dan Henderson was the one fight, I think, where people did favor Bisping going into it.
Yeah, but I mean, you also have to look at that fight with Dan Henderson and Michael Bisping. Awesome performance from Michael Bisping, awesome performance from Dan Henderson. But Dan Henderson, in his 40s, was able to inflict the type of damage he did to Michael Bisping. I love Michael Bisping, but the guy has been through the wars ever since he went into the UFC, save for his first 3, 4, or 5 fights. He's only been facing the best fighters on the planet, the biggest names in the game. So we talked before about Little Nogueira going through the wars. Michael Bisping's gone through the wars. All you have to do is look at the evidence on his face. Is this the fight that he wants? If I'm Michael Bisping, yes, I want fights that I can win, but I also want fights that are competitive.
And that affect his bank account.
When you're the champion, we've just got all accustomed to this conversation, but the champion's supposed to fight the challenger. This is the challenger. Michael fight him. And Mike has said that if and when he loses, not if, everybody loses again, and when he loses again, he will retire.
That's what I don't want.
Well, yeah, it would suck to go out to this guy flying through the air, generating that kind of power. But Mike has had an amazing career. He is the middleweight champion of the world and has a win over Anderson Silva and has done everything he set out to do. And he fully intends to win a couple more fights before he retires.
And I totally understand that, and I support that. But when you think about this thing, when you use your expertise and your analysis on what you anticipate from Michael Bisping, Yoel Romero, how do you picture it going down?
I mean, Bisping has to be aggressive. That's what he's good at. And of course, that is really dangerous. Yeah. But, Romero in his last fight fought very patient against aggressiveness. If he fights that way, he's fighting in that way to land the big Romero on you. And Bisping can stay away from that. It's possible. But Romero would be the favorite. But, Tyron Woodley, the welterweight champion, he's the underdog in every one of his fights too. And he was absolutely the underdog against Wonderboy. And he found a new gear and he found new answers. Mike can do that too.
And that fight, to me, becomes a lot different from the first 2 rounds as opposed to the last 2, if you're talking about a 4th and 5th round between Michael Bisping and Yoel Romero. I think it becomes very interesting at that point. The UFC, it is a busy, busy month. As we mentioned, Derek Brunson and Robert Whitaker, they will be meeting in Melbourne, Australia, and the prelims for that card will be airing here on Fight Network in Canada Saturday night, November the 26th.
Coming up, when breaking down a fight, there are certain keys to victory for each fighter. But those keys become even more specific in a rematch. Robin exclusively revisits the first fight to determine the winning conditions for Ryan Bader and Lil Nog. When Fight News Now Live continues.